Today we are going through replacing a 4.0 head. This is on a Jeep Wrangler LJ, same thing as a TJ. The first thing we're going to do, we've already pulled the tube off for the air filter, and now we're going to go underneath. We are here on the passenger side. We're going to open the petcock and drain the coolant out so that way it's not all over the shop. Alright, so we got the coolant drained. Next we're going to remove the bands off of the upper and lower bands on the upper radiator hose. Then we'll do the same with the heater core, or heater hoses. If the heater hose is stuck, you can always just grab it with a pair of channel locks and twist it back and forth, and that'll break it loose. And then you can pull it right off.
It's not really carbonated.
Next we will go ahead and remove the battery connections. Alright, so we have battery disconnected. Throw a glove underneath there just to make sure it can't accidentally make contact. And now we will remove the positive off of our alternator, and we'll move on from there. Alright, so now that we have our positive disconnected off of the alternator, I'm going to put the nut back on there real quick, just so it stays with it. I don't usually have a problem with figuring out where nuts and bolts go, but just in case, can't get lost if it's on it. So now we're going to go down here to the tensioner. You may not have a spring tensioner. If you don't have a spring tensioner and it's got the bolt style, it'll be underneath the power steering pump over here. You have to loosen the locking nut, and then you can back off the bolt and put the slack into the belt and then remove it. But we have the spring tensioner on this style. So we got a 1/2 inch drive in there. We'll push it down to get our slack, and then we'll pull our belt off. Now that we have the belt off, we will go ahead and remove these two bolts. This one here and this one up here. Now we will take a pry bar. Just work it. Oh, that was actually easier than normal. Cool. And we will pull her. I spoke too soon. Alright, now we got the alternator off. We're going to go ahead and pull the bracket loose. We got 1, 2, 3, and there's another one up underneath here, all of which are 14 millimeters. We'll zip those off and move on. There we go. Alright, next we are going to remove the coil pack. Pull all 4 bolts out and pop that off there. Next we're going to remove the thermostat housing, which is 2 13 millimeter bolts. Now we will remove the idler pulley, which is a 14 millimeter. Alright, we are removing the water pump, but if you weren't, you could actually just, once you took everything apart, remove the head and just work around the heater hose line there. So we are removing the water pump though. We're replacing it with a new one. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the pulley bolts here. Alright, so I removed the little radiator hose, removed the pulley. Now we'll go around and we'll remove all the water pump bolts as well. Alright, so next we're going to remove the power steering pump. That way it's out of the way. We got 3 bolts, one here. You turn the hose and line it up. There's another one somewhere right here, and one at the bottom. We'll hit those real quick. See how it's going? Alright, so now remove the last bolt. We're going to get this out of the way. Then we'll take some mechanics wire, run it through the pulley here. To where it's not getting beat up. It's out the way, and you're going to need to disconnect it. So that'll work. Alright, next thing is we're going to go ahead and start unplugging all of our plugs here for our fuel injectors. Go through and undo each one of our injectors so we can get this harness out of the way. Maybe. So sometimes you'll have a hard time getting these plugs undone. What I do, give it a quick shot with some lubricant, and just to get the dirt and stuff out of there, since they are Jeeps and we off-road them. I'll blow it out real good. Now hopefully it'll come right apart. Like that. Get that dirt and all that out of there, and it's usually pretty good. Alright, so we got all the plugs unhooked. We went ahead and did the IAC, MAF sensor, all that stuff around the throttle body too. So now we're going to go ahead and unclip this off of the fuel line. It pops down and then slides towards the engine. There we go. Put that off there. Same thing, I like to spray it. Okay, so these are Jeeps. Everything don't like to come apart like it's supposed to. So then there's all kinds of different types of fuel line tools, but we are going to use, let me get some light on this. All right. So we got the assortment, just a regular standard assortment. We're going to push this in, push the line towards, we pushed it in, and now that goes in there. And it should, of course it wants to fight me. And there we go. So we pushed it in, pushed the tool in, and then pull it off, and she disconnected. If it's been running here recently, it helps a little bit if you disconnect or take the fuel cap loose. That way it's not pressurized. So, all right. Next, we're going to go ahead and start taking our intake bolts loose. Pop our vacuum line off the side of it over there, and usually there's a 10 or a 12 millimeter holding the fuel rail attached to the intake, and then we will get the intake out of the way here. We will leave the injectors and the fuel rail. That way we don't have to mess with it. So, all right, let me get that done and I'll get back to you. All right, so we got the intake off. As you can see, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts across the top. We popped those off, and then up from underneath, use a 9/16 socket with a swivel and an extension. And you can see every other one has got a flange right here with a trap bolt. Same over here. There's 2 back there doing the same. One right here and one right here. Take those off, you pull the intake off, and then we're not going to actually completely disconnect the exhaust. We'll just let it kind of swing out of the way. We're going to take the rest of the bolts loose here, and then we'll pull it away from the head. All right, guys, as you can see, we swung the exhaust out of the way. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the valve cover, and just make sure you get that harness off the back stud and grab the bolts that are behind it. We'll pull that off and moving on. All right, so we removed all the 7/16 bolts. All right, so we removed all the 7/16 or 11mm bolts. Now, as you can see, we removed the valve cover. Now we'll go ahead and pull the gasket off. All right, now that we got the valve cover and the gasket off, we're going to go ahead and remove the rockers. We're going to make sure we keep them in order, and the same with the push rods. All right, so we got the rockers pulled off and we got all the push rods out. If you notice here, I've numbered this piece of cardboard. I just took a razor and slit a hole in each one, or for each one of the push rods down through here. So we got that all numbered. And if you come over here, I've done the same with the rockers. That way everything goes back into the same spot that it came out of. So if you come over here, we'll move these out of the way. Then we're going to go through, we'll pull each one of our head bolts off. And we've got new ones, so it's not a big deal. Do remember, you know, obviously all the long studded ones go on this side. There is a short stud on this one. You want to make sure that, or two of them actually, you want to make sure you get in the same spot. And you're going to need a, where to go? It'll be a 1/2-inch drive. Was it a 16 point or 12 point or whatever? Look at that. To remove them. We'll get those zapped loose. You can use a breaker bar or an impact or whatever. Just make sure you replace them when you put them back in. All right, so we got all the head bolts out. Now, we're gonna get up in here and pull this heavy son of a gun out. Oh, I still got that hooked on there, don't I? Well, there we go. Not no more. All right, let's get this out of here. All right, so we got the head and gasket off. Now we'll get everything all cleaned up. And we got a brand new head to put on this thing. So make sure you come back for the second video to see us reinstalling it. All right, guys, so I'm gonna stop here and give you guys a little bit of a backstory on this. This Jeep came in. It's been running like crap, and then been blowing black smoke periodically here and there. It's only gotten worse as times went on. Last year I did a compression check on it, and it had 2 cylinders, one that was significantly low and one that was pretty low. After it would turn over a couple of times, the pressure would start to come up a little bit. You'd add oil into it and the compression would come up, which would normally mean that, well, it's got bad rings. This Jeep's had a problem overheating for a long time. It's overheated on several occasions. And last year we put a new head on it because we did a leak down test and it was blowing bubbles in the cooling system. But the head gasket actually looked good, and then there were some other symptoms and things going on. So, there's a question on the head. We got what was, in my opinion, a known good head. My buddy, he's a machinist. He took it into work, cleaned it up and whatnot, came back to me, and then so the motor it came out of had a busted piston skirt, but otherwise it ran great. When it came back to me before we put it in, I lapped the valves, put new valve seals in it, we put it on, torqued it all down. After that, it didn't overheat except for when the fan would quit working. But the misfire was still there, and the low compression was still there. So we were going to put another head on this because the customer had question on the head itself. You know, sat for 3 years prior to us even messing with it. We get into it, we tear the head off, and you know, I couldn't just put the head on. That wouldn't be right. So we get in here. All right, so we got, yeah, the head off of it, and got to looking. Like I say, he wanted me to put another head on this. So I rolled this to where it was about, the first 4 were about halfway down. And besides the fact that I mean, whether it be the ones at the top, you can see they're, and they got play in every which direction here. I mean, the video's not even doing it justice, like a little bit. But, so we had low compression on 2 and 5. So I took diesel fuel and put about a cup, the same amount in each cylinder. And 2, this one here, leaked empty in 4.5 minutes, something like that. I got it written down, but, and 5 leaked out in about 14 minutes. And these 2, there wasn't even no sense in checking the other 2, because these 2 leaked out, and actually they still hadn't leaked out in 40-something minutes, almost an hour. So they were still holding fluid. But so between the fact that, you know, the cylinders are glazed, no cross hatches, there's loads of play in this thing. Biggest problem was it was running rich, and as well as blowing oil, you know, out the exhaust, especially at startup. You know, and then we confirmed everything from the leak down test. You know, when I did the leak down test, last time, you know, before we changed the head, it was leaking out the cooling system because it was blowing bubbles in the radiator. This time, it was not coming out the exhaust or the intake. It was coming out only the valve cover, and massively. So 2 and 5 had low compression, as well as didn't pass the leak down test. So yeah, we will not be putting a head on. We will be replacing the motor. So I'm sorry that this video turned into a teardown video and not a how-to with an install. But if you follow the video and see all the bolts and, you know, what the sizes are on most of them and all that stuff, hopefully it'll still help you out. You just do it in reverse order, put it back together, and make sure you use the torque specs. But you know, we'll shoot another video on it to make sure that it helps you all out in the future. Until next time, keep it right side up. We'll get her all ready to go wheeling this year.